Welcome to Screen Junkies News. I am Roth Cornett, and I am joined by none other than Mr. Billy Business.
Because we're going to talk some business.
We are going to talk some business. It's another day, another Netflix story. Man, every day we're getting something new about Netflix as the streaming races emerge, and this is a big one. This actually came out yesterday that Disney is dumping Netflix. They are breaking up.
Oh, that's kind of sad.
Yeah, it's a little sad. And Inez Alvarez Rodrigo on Twitter asked us to talk about it and how this may impact the Marvel Netflix series specifically. But let's first just set up what happened. So Disney is ending their film distribution agreement with Netflix, and they're going to launch their own streaming service.
I feel like Disney already kind of had a lever on the side, though, because Hulu has a bunch of Disney stuff that's like, oh, I thought this was like Netflix only had the thing. Netflix had Disney had another cell phone.
A little something on the side.
Yeah.
I think Disney had a couple little things on the side because they have, so the Landmark deal initially was for the film distribution rights, and that meant that through beginning in 2016, any of the theatrically released films would go exclusively to Netflix, and that they are ending.
Right.
And the other deal was the Marvel Netflix television series, but of course they also have on ABC, they had Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Agent Carter, Inhumans is coming, and then on Hulu they have The Runaways in development. So
they also got
they
got Cloak and Dagger on Freeform, which they own Freeform, which used to be ABC Family.
Yeah. And then if you get into Star Wars, which we're not even going to get into Star Wars yet, but you can look to like Disney XD.
Right.
And so they are playing the field a little bit, but I think they're actually trying to put a ring on themselves.
I think it's smart. Look, we saw Disney do this earlier this year. Everybody at Disney California Adventures was like, why are they getting rid of Tower of Terror? And it's simple. You have so many IPs now. Why would you pay CBS licensing for a franchise that you don't own? Let's start bringing our own IPs in our own house, literally. This makes all the sense in the world for Disney to do. I'm just kind of surprised it took so long.
Well, let's just talk about specifically what's happening, right? So you're still going to have the Disney films on Netflix for a period of time.
Correct.
And then it's going to come. The streaming service is going to launch in 2019. And then the films are going to be on the streaming service. So that's one question. And they're talking about on the streaming service, they're also going to have original television. And I mean, there's endless amounts of content that they own and produce. But how it's distributed now, as we've been talking about, is a little bit fragmented. And I wonder how much they're going to start to consolidate. They sort of hold back their movies, like they make you buy it, versus rent it and things like that. And so what this means for Marvel, Daredevil, and the Defender series in general, let's talk about what it might mean because we don't know yet. They have said that they still will have those series on Netflix, but I say that means asterisks for now.
Yeah, I'm starting to wonder if this Netflix Marvel deal is going to be a lot like the deal that they made with Paramount when they purchased Marvel back in 2009, where at the time it was around the time that Thor and all those were coming out. So they actually kept the Paramount logo on Avengers in 2012 and in Iron Man 3 in 2013, and then it kind of silently went away. So even though Disney had those, it was still like, oh, Paramount did this, but we're just quietly distributing it. And then with Thor: The Dark World, it was like, nope, it's over.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if Netflix is the same way, where it'll be Netflix original maybe for another season of each show, and then it quietly just kind of is like, and now Daredevil makes its debut on Disney service.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to take a little bit of time because the licensing deals have to run themselves out too, right? So here's the interesting thing is that they made this deal with Netflix years ago. They had to let it play out a little bit. They've come to the conclusion that it's not in their best interest. And a lot of the studios are having questions about this. They feel like Netflix is siphoning off, their IP and their opportunity to utilize their IP. And so these moves are pretty interesting. And I think they're going to only evolve further. With another notable thing is that Netflix acquired Miller World. I think it's Miller World. And I have to think tomato. And I have to think that in comments, they will tell us it was Miller. So Miller World, Mark Miller's company, right? So they made a move and they acquired this entire company to build new original series on and fully own it because they license a lot of what we call Netflix originals, as we've talked about.
Right.
But they bought Comic Book Company, I think probably knowing that Disney was going to pull their properties away from them, and it was a counter move, right?
Right. I mean, there's no such thing as a coincidence.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, I wouldn't be shocked too if they're trying to make deals with IDW and Boom and Image and some of these kind of like
Smaller.
third tier comic book companies to get those original things. Disney's also notorious for just sitting back and let everyone else do the hard work and figure out what works. That's why they didn't jump into Blu-ray until a couple years into it. It's why they're kind of one of the last to get into 4K. They always want to see what everyone else is doing, let everyone work out the kinks, and then come out bigger and better. Like, and here it is. Here's
Yeah.
Disney service.
So let's lay out the picture for the Marvel Netflix series. So in 2013, they made this deal, which again was a huge deal at the time. It
Right.
was for 60 hours of television, the 4 shows. So it was Jessica Jones, Daredevil, Iron Fist, and Luke Cage leading into, and we're about to get it in 2 weeks, the Defenders, right? So that was the deal. And they have since, and that is now running out. And it was through 2019 to create this. And they have announced sequel, like second seasons for these series. We already have a second season of Daredevil, and there has been announced Punisher, right?
Sure.
So we have to assume that's probably all still happening, and that
Right.
will take us at least through the next couple of years. And then at that point, does it then just go with Disney streaming service up and running? They've had a little while, even to get it going, and then it's all going to come back to them. They've also released DVDs of Jessica Jones and Daredevil. So Netflix isn't exclusively maintaining the rights
Sure.
to these shows. So my question is, do they have these shows on Netflix in perpetuity, and then just the character license comes back to Marvel and they make their own their own seasons
Right.
on their streaming service exclusively? Is that the plan? Or do they just buy back all the shows?
Well, here's the thing. First of all, Netflix notorious for keeping everything about them as secretive as they possibly can, except something like this, which is impossible. But there is precedent for Disney and Marvel to go in and get back what they don't originally own. They went back in 2013 and bought the rights to Iron Man 2, Thor, and Captain America: The First Avenger, so that now they own that complete collection. The only thing that Disney has not been able to get back is Star Wars: A New Hope. Other than that, every other business that they acquire everything. So I would guess that this is how I see it going down. I see Daredevil and all of these living on Netflix and eventually coming to the Disney service as well, living on both of them for a while, and then only new episodes coming once they've completely purchased it out from Netflix, who, if they are running at that $20 billion debt, maybe they're just like, you know what, we got to get some of this back. Let's see if we can just get rid of this and get something else.
Yeah, and then it's interesting to see what they're going to do in terms of like if they create a live action Star Wars show eventually.
Right.
Would they go, they own ABC as we know, would they put that on ABC, or would they hold it exclusively on their streaming service, trying to the same thing that Netflix does to beef up subscriber base,
I don't think it's a terrible. Here's where, because we've had that discussion about, everyone has Netflix, a lot of people have Hulu, and that's about where we stop. Another service on top is a lot. And that's why I'm not sure how Star Trek Discovery is going to do, because it seems to be the only show on CBS All Access that anyone would want. But when you're Disney and you have so many IPs, you've got your Star Wars, you've got Indiana Jones, you've got Marvel, and let's not kid ourselves, there'll probably be a handful of others in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
It just becomes icing on the cake, and I think everyone will have Netflix and Disney, maybe even take out Hulu, who knows, but I could definitely see them putting their own exclusives on there. It makes sense, only because they're Disney though.
Yeah, and here's the question too, is how are all the other studios going to respond? Because Disney is really good, like you said, of doubling down on how to make their money. They are also invested in the tech.
Right.
They have a large stake in the tech that they're going to be using to create this streaming service, as well as the one that they're going to do for ESPN, which is a whole other can of worms, which we will definitely try to get into at another point. But so they're making money on money on money, right? Like they are feeding themselves. They are literally putting a wedding ring on themselves, you know?
Which it's brilliant, really.
Yeah.
I worry, we're talking about Netflix, but I also worry for Hulu's sake because ABC is such a big part of it. If I want to go watch last night's Modern Family, I go to Hulu. However, if it's owned by ABC, maybe now eventually it all starts to move. Again, I don't want to get into ESPN, but I will say that people worried about like, oh no, Monday Night Football or whatever. ESPN makes their deals with the leagues. So I think that's going to be a much tougher battle. That could be years away. But I do think that with ABC content, that could be a very real possibility that gets pulled from Hulu eventually.
Yeah, and here's the thing, just really quickly on ESPN, I think that is a long-term bet. Two things. This is just speculation.
All speculative.
All speculation. Two things. One is that I think that they're making the long-term bet that eventually really TV goes away and that it's going to be available on the streaming service. But secondarily to that, a lot of the stadiums are installing these VR cameras, and it feels like that could be an experience potentially that would lend itself to a streaming service. But that aside, with Hulu, the tough path for Hulu has been that the networks have gone back and forth, like you said, with CBS, feeling like, well, we should have our own content and our own service, which I don't think is going to work. I don't think CBS All Access is going to play out. But the secondary hard thing for Hulu is that it cannot be international the way that Netflix is.
Correct.
Netflix is a buyout. That means it can go into international markets. They own it straight out. It's not a licensing deal here in the US versus Hulu. They license those shows here, but then other markets are open for separate licensing deals for the television shows. Isn't this sexy?
Well, that's why this Disney thing is so unprecedented, because for so long it's always like, why can I get this here and not here? How come I can get this character in this show and not this show? Disney is slowly but surely taking those steps to be like, we own everything. It can come out globally at the same time because we control everything that we have.
Exactly. And just to sort of put a button on that, let's say there's a show that Sony Television produces, right? But it airs on NBC.
Which happens all the time.
So that means like actually Sony Television owns the show, NBC licensed the show, and they air it here in the US. But Sony then can make a different deal with a different network in Germany, in different territories. But if Disney is making the show, producing the show, and they own the show, and it airs on their network, they're full on. They have complete rights to do whatever they want with it, which is in a similar model to what Netflix has. Then it can go global. Then they really can have a model that eventually over time really will work. I don't know. I'm curious to see if this will be effective because I think at first there might be some kind of resistance.
Sure.
And they better be building in, and I imagine they are in the next couple of years, some original programming that you literally can only get there.
Oh, it's like it's inevitable at this point. That seems to be how these subscription services are surviving, is original content. The other thing that Disney has, besides, you're right, owning the content, owning the characters, being able to market those characters,
having a stake in the technology.
Who else has a theme park that they can build rides around, that they can build another source of revenue around this one property that you own? Disney knew this from the very beginning. Go back to 1995 when they bought ABC. They knew that this is when they knew. I think they knew, like, the name of the game is owning your content, not licensing it, not distributing it everywhere. It's owning your content.
And what's interesting is because their previous partner in bed, Netflix, that's a lesson that they've been learning now, which is that they have not, they've owned it, but not, they're licensing it. And so even their original series, now they're like, we really have to make this too.
Right. House of Cards, Orange is the New Black, Netflix. There's no Netflix lot that you can go shoot at. These are all licensed by either Lionsgate or another independent thing. And it's kind of a bummer when you look at it in that way, because Netflix at the end of the day doesn't really own a whole lot.
It doesn't at all. And that's what I think with a large acquisition that they announced this week. I was going to say made, but I'm sure they made it before the announcement, well before the announcement that they announced this week is their first big move in that direction. And I got to say, I think this is fascinating to watch. I don't know if I'm alone in this, but I think over the next 5 years, we are seeing entertainment shake up and change so dramatically, and no one really truly knows how it's all going to shake out. But I years ago, I was like, why isn't every studio just doing, why aren't there just 5 streaming services? And it's Warner Brothers streaming service, you know, and it's their entire library. And one of the reasons is because there are so many licensing deals, right, that we then, and I think Disney's been doing this, have to untangle first for them to really get all of their content back.
I will say, when you talk about another service, you may roll your eyes like, again, but I looked this up, Disney's bets and what their ROI or return on investment is. So they acquired Marvel for $4 billion. Currently, the MCU has a total of $4.9 billion in worldwide box office. So you're done. Like, you've already made your money back. Since they bought Lucasfilm, we've had 2 Star Wars movies come out, The Force Awakens and Rogue One. They've already made $3.1 billion off of 2 of their movies, with 2 of them like coming out in the next couple of years. Like, anytime Disney makes a bet, it's always an educated bet.
Oh, yeah.
And as much as we may be like, that's crazy, why would Disney? Because they know, and it works. Look at their return on investments. It's nuts.
Yeah, we were saying before, this is a joke that will be fun for us, you know, that Alan Horn's like Palpatine, like
just sitting back like, excellent.
That's a little bit like Smithers, but not Smithers. Smithers is the what's his name? The Simpsons.
You're asking the guy who does not watch or like Simpsons.
You've never seen
that.
The
Is
Simpsons.
A whole different video.
Burns. Thank you very much. All right, that's a whole different video for another day. It's been fun chatting the Netflix with you. I got to tell you guys, like, this stuff is super fun for me to talk about and think about and try and untangle from a consumer perspective. We're going to be doing more of it around here if you like it, trying to get some experts in here to help us figure out what in the world is going on in this business. But the news for now is that you're still going to be able to see the Marvel Netflix series on Netflix. But again, I would say asterisk for now.
For now.
And I would not be shocked if they came out with one of their first exclusive pieces of content on that streaming service to either be a live action Star Wars show or another Marvel show.
I'm going to call it. My prediction, Moon Knight. It's a lower tier but popular character that everyone says, how come they haven't made anything? I think they're holding that for their first piece.
So you're saying Moon Knight, I'm saying Star Wars. Could be some combination
Probably
of both. But The Defenders comes out in a couple of weeks on Netflix, so Netflix must be happy about that, again, for now, and they're trying to make their long-term bets too. You let us know what you think in the comments below. Are you going to sign up for this Disney streaming services? Oh, we think we won't. We think we won't. Thanks for watching Screen Junkies News, Billy Business.
Yeah, I will watch Simpsons when Disney eventually buys it.
Yeah, there you go. And the day that Disney buys The Simpsons, which, oh God.
It's coming.
It's coming. At what point is this a monopoly? Answer that question in the comments below. Thanks for joining us today, and we will see you next time. Let's all try and be excellent to each other. Click here for more awesome Screen Junkies news, and click the logo to subscribe.